In his work Civilization and its Discontents, Freud deals with social and religious phenomena as expressed in collective and individual psychology. He situates the human psyche within the fabric of social institutions. What we call civilization is to some extent the cumulative product of our psychology, its intrinsic nature, and the ways in which it reacts upon its environments. Civilization is also in some ways analogous to the human psyche, exhibiting a collective psychology that develops according to similar rules. In this book, Freud also situates the production and enjoyment of creative art and other forms of sublimation within the context of broader questions such as the purpose of human life, the pursuit of happiness, and the functions of culture and religion. Freud views the entire realm of art as arising from a psychical constitution on the part of human beings that allows them a channel of escape or release from the harsh demands of reality. From this point of view, art is of the same order as fantasy, issuing from the demands of wish fulfillment and by its very nature opposed to reality. Freud's brief comments on beauty are in the same vein. When we adopt an aesthetic attitude to the goal of life, we seek happiness predominantly in the enjoyment of beauty. Even though beauty has no obvious uses and even though there is no clear cultural necessity for it. Freud's argument concerning art is fundamental. The human psyche, frustrated in its attempts to mold the world in a self-comforting image, resorts to art to create its world of fantasy. Art, philosophy, and religion is the highest form of such an impulse and is the embodiment of civilization itself, whose foundations are erected on the graveyard of repressed instincts. Freud views religion as one of the schemes of human thought that regard reality as the sole enemy and encourage a turning away from the world, as is embodied in the delusive behavior of hermits or madmen. The religions of mankind must be classed among the mass delusions of this kind. By arresting people in a state of psychical infantilism, religions succeed in sparing many people an individual neurosis. Civilization checks both aggression and sexuality by fostering their internalization into the superego. The resulting tension between superego and the ego is characterized by Freud as the sense of guilt. The place of the father or both parents, says Freud, is taken by the larger human community. Freud states that aggressiveness is an original, self-subsisting, instinctual disposition in man. This constitutes the greatest impediment to civilization. Since civilization develops by restricting sexuality and aggression, the evolution of culture is a struggle between eros and thanatos. The sense of guilt, he says, arises from precisely this primordial ambivalence and is the expression of this internal struggle. What is interesting is Freud's statement that the demands of an individual's superego will coincide with the precepts of the prevailing cultural superego. This is an implicit acknowledgement that the content of the superego is not somehow patterned on some primal or timeless myth, but that it is profoundly and locally rooted in an individual's ethical environment. Like Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, Freud has no illusions about where our ideas ultimately derive from. Man's judgments of value follow directly his wishes for happiness, that accordingly they are an attempt to support his illusions with arguments. In general, civilization is built up upon a renunciation of instinct. Freud challenges many of the central impulses of Enlightenment thought. The Cartesian view of the human self as an independent unity, ego as autonomous and rational agent, the idea of human progress in history, The idea that the external world and nature can be subjugated both intellectually and materially, and that human beings can understand themselves. Like Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Bergson, Freud sees human reason as intrinsically practical and self preservative in its orientation. Human reason is ultimately involved in an intense struggle with our sexual and aggressive instincts. What Freud gives to and shares with much cultural and literary theory is a view of human self as constructed to a large extent by its environment, as a product of familial and larger social forces. A profound sense of the limitations of reason and of language itself, an intense awareness of the closure affected by conventional systems of thought and behavior, of the severe constraints imposed upon human sexuality. He also gives us a view of art and religion as issuing from broader patterns of human need, and an acknowledgement that truth value and moral value are not somehow absolute or universal, but are motivated by the economic and ideological demands of civilization.